Hello and welcome to a very special Nice and Nasty podcast. And if you haven't noticed already, I don't have a Scottish accent, so it is not Alan, a Mamemeister, that is talking at the moment. It is Delboy, because I've been asked to do a special by interviewing Mamemeister himself. So that's daunting. But he's got very good faith in me. So I'm going to introduce you to the man himself, Mamemeister. Hello, Alan.
How the hell are you, mate? What are you doing on my channel? Did I cut a key for you or something? You let yourself in?
I know you phoned me up and you said, "Can you help me out?" And I went, "Yeah, all right." And then you told me what it was, and I went, "Oh shit!" But no, I'm very pleased that you did. I always like to try and do something new, but it's quite daunting to actually talk to the originator of a very nice podcast that I listen to regularly, and interview the person that started the whole thing off. So I don't even have to explain to you what this format is going to be like, but I'd like you just at the very beginning just to give a little bit of an indication of who you are, what you do, and what got you into doing stuff with classic computers and games.
Yeah, you know, as I've said before, I'm like that old uncle that just tells you the same story over and over and over again. I'm aware of that. Yeah, I've been playing video games pretty much like yourself, Dale, since about 1979. Yep, right from the sort of LED games through the 8-bit, 16-bit consoles, PC, and then about when would it be? Oh, 1997, when I first got the internet. The first thing I googled, or it wasn't even Google back in 1997. It was like Yahoo or something, I think it was. I typed in Commodore 64 into a search engine, and up popped Jeff Minter. And then I clicked on a few links, and before I knew it, I was in this thing called a forum, which to the kids is basically Discord, but 30 years ago, where you can create chats, and like you can create a thing about whatever, and then people can reply to it. So I got into that, and then about a couple of years later, somebody, I'm sure his name was like Xylon or something, he put a post up saying he's got a massive collection of old computers, and he's moving house, and does anybody want them? And he put a list of, oh, it was phenomenal. It was about maybe 50 computers, and it's like, does anybody want any of these? Now, if you did that nowadays, people would be like, people would be fighting, killing their granny to get these, because they're so like desired now. But back in 2002, nobody gave a shit about the Commodore 64. Why do I want why do I want a Commodore 64? I've got my PC. I can play Doom. I've got a 3DFX card. I've got a PlayStation. Why do I want a Commodore 64? Nobody's interested. So there was a few people replied, and I was one of them. I just said, "Oh yeah, that would be nice if I could put my hand up and get something." I didn't even ask. I didn't even tell him what I wanted. I just says, if you can give me something. And then about 2 weeks later, a parcel arrived at my dad's house actually, and it had a VIC 20, a BBC Master 128, and I can't remember what the other thing was. There was something else, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with this? Like, I've got this machine. I've got no means to load anything. But then that started the, wait a minute. So I've now got a BBC computer. I wonder if I could get a Commodore 64. That would be great, because I mean, I had a Commodore 64, back in the day, and it was great. I would love to be able to play Super Pipeline 2 again. You need to bear in mind this was before emulators were a thing. So, I hadn't played a Commodore 64 game in probably 12 years. So I went on to that there, eBay, typed in Commodore 64, buy it now, 15 quid, I'll have that. And I built up a collection. I bought that, and I could get an Atari, I can get this, I can get that. And I built up quite a decent collection of hardware. And then about 2013, I was in my very, very modest games room, and I was like, I can't be bored playing anything. What am I going to do? And I thought, why don't I just record myself with my phone? Because this is the point where phones were starting to, you could record some decent video using a phone. So
Yeah.
I pointed the phone at my TV. Or in fact, it was my TV, and I had what did I have? I had the Mega CD, the original. This is before emulators, really. No, I did have emulators at that point, but I didn't have the means to record it back then. And I recorded a game called Sewer Shark, and I just thought I'll call it the Mamemeister 10-minute mashup, and it was just a stupid name that I came up with, and I uploaded it onto YouTube, and I did one every single day, and then after a couple of months, I was going to give it up because I think the last video I'd done, I had like 2 views, and I thought, I'm just wasting my time here. Who am I actually doing this for? Pointless. And then a couple of the guys went, "Oh, we actually really enjoy what you do," and that was it. And so that was 2013, and it's just something that's never left me. It's part of me. It is part of my life. I've been doing it now for 11 years. It's been a great thing. It's been an outlet for, like, some may argue, outlet for my creativity, but it's an outlet nevertheless for people, whether you're in a band, whether you sing, whether you want to make stop motion videos, whether you want to have like a film review channel, whether you want to have a personal blog like yourself. It's a fantastic thing, and it's something that I've been doing. And yeah, I do kind of, it's like it ebbs and flows, like the ocean. My hobby, real life, as you know yourself, Dale, real life does come along. There's been times where I'm going to do
Yeah.
something, and then some serious shit happens at home, and you're like, right, I can't do this. And it's a hobby for me first and foremost. But it's been a big part of my life, and I've made a lot of online friends, and I've made some real life friends, yourself included. It's been a great thing, and until I get to a point where I think I don't want to do this anymore, I'll keep doing it, and the wonderful thing is about it, it's a hobby. I don't make any money on it. I can pick and choose as and when. I used to kind of beat myself up if I hadn't put out a video for a couple of days, but now it's like, oh, I've not done a video for. Well, I do tend to put out at least one or two. But anyway, does that answer your question?
It actually does, but it actually brings in some more questions, and they might be a little bit boring. But so you mentioned at the very early days, and I mean, as much as what you mentioned, I still count a Pong machine as a games machine, and I would probably count that as my first machine, and that predates, it's like 1977 actually, or 76 when I had one of those. But it is a piece of crap, really, when you look at it. Sort of like now, you needed 2 players, really. It was a terrible thing. But you mentioned 2000 was or around that point was a turning point for you. There was all these machines coming up, and you thought, yeah, why not have a Commodore 64? Did you still have a CRT or a sort of standard telly around then? Because I remember back in the day, I think I started to move over to LCD, or monitors then. So were you connecting these to a telly that you still had, or did you buy one special for these machines? Or
I'm trying to think. It's actually it would be 2000, because I'd actually moved back to my dad's at that point when I had them. I think, yeah, I did have the. It was what the hell was it? A Panasonic. It was a 32-inch, massive TV, 32-inch TV, and it was it was. I was going to say it was called an HD TV. I think it did. What did it do? Did it do like 720 or 480 or something? I can't remember what it was. But it had like, was it component that went into the back of it? I can't remember. So it was a modern sort of TV. It wasn't LCD or plasma, anything like that. But it did still have the RF. So I could still technically connect it up to it. But the thing is, even though I had these machines, I would have to dig it out the cupboard, put it on the floor, plug it in, tune it, and then it's like, right, what am I going to do with it? I've got no means. I've got no means to play anything. What I could do is type in my name and go to 10, blah 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 blah. I had nothing. So it probably it took a wee while for my hobby to kind of grow and to start accumulating. I think initially I was just buying. It's a bit like people. I've got a mate. He's got all the he's got like the $6 million man. He's got the Evil Knievel. Guys, yourself included, me, and probably every nerd that's listening to this. We love to be able to sort of just relive our youth. We're able to, we love to be able to buy things that we had memories of, or in a lot of cases, buy things that you remember that you wanted, that your mum and dad says there's no danger you're going to get that. And now you've got a bit more disposable income. And even though the price of like hardware and that, well, nowadays it has gone up in price. Back then you could go into eBay and you could get a Spectrum for 10 quid. Because the thing, and it sounds crazy thinking, I got my Vectrex with like 7 games for like 100 quid. And you'd probably be talking 600 quid for that now.
Yeah, amazing.
You need to remember 2000. The Xbox, the PlayStation 2 was out, so people were playing Call of Duty. Why would anybody want to load up a game on the Spectrum? Nobody was interested. It wasn't even a thing. Yeah, there was probably a few kind of diehards who had never they'd always still been into the hobby, but it wasn't really a big thing. So I got into the scene very, very early on. In fact, one of the pivotal moments for me with the kind of like the classic kind of computers and hardware was when one of my friends, Mark Racing, he did a thing called Retrovision, and this was before you had your big computer events like Zap Live and Play Blackpool. None of these existed because there wasn't the audience, there wasn't the demand. People didn't know about them, they had no interest in them. But Mark, through the Yak Yak forum, which was the Jeff Minter forum that I was a member of. I was a member of that from like 2000 or 1999 right through, in fact earlier, 1997 probably. And Mark came up with this idea: why don't we all get together in a pub in Oxford? And what we'll do is we'll bring along some computer games. So that's what happened. He called it Retrovision. It was the Folly in Oxford, I think it was called, the pub. There was about maybe, 50 people turned up. It was all people that had been talking on forums, and suddenly we were all in this room together, and we're like, God, that's such and such, and that's such, and it was weird. I didn't go to the first one, but I think I went to number 3, which was in 2002 or something like that. But I remember going into this pub, up the stairs, and there was like Commodore 64s. I'd never seen a Commodore 64 since 1985. You know what I mean? And a Vectrex, fucking hell, I remember seeing that in whenever it was, 1981. There was all these things that I'd just never hadn't seen for years and years and years and years. There was even a guy took along a Skeletrix set as well, and it was just incredible. It was a real life changer for me. It was an incredible experience. Now they've obviously got much bigger, and I don't have the same thrill I had back then. But at that point, the irony being, I think there was also somebody also had the Virtua Boy. That's the one that I own, the one that you seen behind me in all my videos. I actually ended up buying it off the guy that took it. But yeah, that was when I suddenly realised, okay, well, I could buy this and I could buy that, and then I think I must have bought like old TVs to use. I can't remember exactly what I used, but I must have bought some old TVs. But yeah, that was the real kind of pivotal point for me when I actually realised that these machines existed, and suddenly I had this interest in wanting to play old computer games again.
Yeah. And I should think the other thing is that it must have been sort of like quite a big learning curve, because as much as these machines were cheap, the wires and things, you know, and things like getting SCART splitters and all of this sort of stuff would have been things that you went, oh, I'm gonna have to get myself a SCART splitter now, and that, oh, that's more expensive than the bloody machine I've just bought that actually has got to be plugged into it, and all of that. And then it's like,
Yeah.
how am I going to put that into the TV, and how am I going to choose how to choose each SCART and all of this sort
And
of stuff?
yeah,
As much as a learning curve as turning the machine on and how to load a game, I should think.
yeah. Because one thing that I realised pretty quick was to really make it, to have any point in owning machines, you don't want to have it in a cupboard and think, oh, I fancy playing Manic Miner on the Spectrum today. Right, I'll need to unpack my Commodore 64, and then I'll need to unpack the Spectrum and plug it in and tune it as. I thought the only way I'm ever going to have this as a thing that I can use is to have them all plugged in. So I mean, my little that little games room. If you watch any of my early videos for the first 5 years of YouTube, I was in this tiny little kind of bedroom, or box room. It was more, and I think it was ridiculous. I think I had something like 30 machines all plugged in at once. I mean, I had like 4-in-1 SCARTs going into other 4-in-1 SCARTs, and it was, I'm sure when I switched the power on the national grid, it went boom. There'd be like a dimming in the lights across the
Yeah, the
UK
lights outside dim. Yeah,
because Mamemeister has just turned on his bloody Commodore 64. But yeah, it just became this obsession about having. It wasn't about the games. It was just about, I had this. It was an addiction, having this, being able to buy stuff and buy hardware and all that. Yeah, it was great. And you've people have probably listened to my last waffle. I'm starting to cool towards it now. It's all got out of hand as far as I'm concerned. It's become too popular, and I'm not one of these fucking what do you call it, presumptuous fucking arseholes who think, oh, it wasn't like that back in the day. It's all these young kids, blah blah blah. It's become saturated now. I've had my fun with all the games. I still love
yeah.
playing them. But I kind of want I want to redeem my ticket now, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, it does, and I think you've hit upon a number of points here in the fact that even when you were buying these machines back in 2000, I'm sure when you bought them, you didn't think, how am I going to repair this if it breaks or
Yeah.
anything like that? And you would have just thought, I switch it on, it works, brilliant. Oh, I've just got a working machine, and I'm sure it's going to work for the next 10 years. You're not even really thinking about.
I mean,
Actually, you know what? It's probably got a life spell of about another 30 days or something.
well, I don't mind admitting I threw a couple of Commodore 64s in the bucket because I switched on one day and it was like a black screen in the bin.
Yeah.
I just threw them out. Why wouldn't I throw them out?
But I mean, that's really good to have that sort of like ability to do that, because even if something breaks, I'm loath to get rid of it. It's like, I'll have that for parts. I'm sure something in there is going to be sort of like something I'm going to need or something, and it just piles and piles up. And I think the biggest problem that we've got now, like you say, we've got disposable income. As you get older, it always seems like you can afford the things you couldn't do when you were a kiddie. Why is it that the time that we'd really enjoy these is when we're young, but we haven't got the money, and as we get older, it's when we can buy them, and our life has gone by. I always find that a bit weird, but yeah, I mean, I totally understand all of that. I've got a couple of other questions before we move on, because I realize the sort of like time that we've got on this is well, you started off your channel and it was quite early on. Where was the inspiration of calling all of these different sections like waffles and kerfuffles and all of that came from? I mean, did you look at other channels and just adapt and do something similar, but you called it a different name, or did you make that actually up? There was not really that much going on around you.
No, I can honestly say there has been, other than one feature that I did, and I can't, what did I call it? Not the gadget show, Gadgets Past or something, where I dressed up as a kind of caretaker with the wig and the hat and all that. That was that I was trying to not plagiarise. There's a guy, a fellow Scot, can't even remember his name. It was called On the Spectrum, and his whole channel was based on, it was like a 1980s TV program, and it was fantastic. And that's I tried to do 2 episodes of that. Gadgets Today, I think it was called, and yeah, they were both shite. Although I have to say that the intro is a thingy beauty. Go and watch the intro, and then when it goes to start, just stop it and watch something else. But no, I can honestly say that every other thing that I've done has been my idea. I mean, I was doing 10-minute mashups for probably the first couple of years, and then as I started to get more into it, I started thinking, well, yeah. Here's another one. Steve Benway, he was doing YouTube right from the very beginning. Nice lad. He's got a phenomenal collection of hardware. He was buying stuff when you couldn't give it away. You'd go to a car boot sale and, oh, there's a Jupiter Ace. You want that? Just give me £1 for it. He got all built up with his stuff. But he had a thing called the Friday Talkie, and it was every Friday. And he would talk about stuff. People would give him questions. He would just talk about it, and it became a staple diet of my existence. I used to look forward to Friday, and part of my Friday ritual, I would have a bath, and I would lie in the bath, and I would listen to the Friday Talkie, and it was great. And then at that point, I thought, why don't I do something similar? And I thought, well, I don't want to call it the Friday waffle. Now every bugger uses a waffle. I was the first one to use it. that's what happens. I'm still to find out somebody using the kerfuffle. But yeah, I think I'm not going to try and tell people what they should or should not do. But if I had any tips for like people that do YouTube, is try and put your own mark in it. Try and put your own personal stamp in it. Make it people when people watch your channel, they know who they're watching. Because the number of times I see a channel, I think, oh, that looks really good, and they're not even talking. It's just they're just showing you a game. There's no talking, and I immediately switch it off. I'm not interested in watching a gameplay. It's all about the person, And I know a lot of people like they watch my live streams, and inadvertently I'll have technical problems, and sometimes half the actual video is me just fanning about trying to get things working, and people think that's fantastic. They think it's hilarious, and that's fine because it's about the person. Try and put your own stamp in it. Try and mix it up a wee bit, because you're going to get bored stiff doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So, and when I think about I've come to realize that the people that watch my videos, they don't really want me playing anything that came out after the Amiga. If I play a SNES game, I'll be lucky if I get 10 views. Nobody wants to hear me playing SNES games. They want to see me either play or talk about 8-bit machines. That's where it's, I don't know. It's a bit like putting Jeremy Clarkson, putting him into a cookery program. People like him or loathe him, people want to see Jeremy Clarkson talk about cars. They don't want to see Mamemeister play a PlayStation 3 game. They're not interested.
Yeah.
They want to see me talking about these games. So it's quite restricted what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 8-bit games. Invariably, it's the Commodore 64, because that's what I have the memories for. I don't have any experience of Amstrad games or MSX games. Other than like the Spectrum, I knew my mate would have a Spectrum. I would watch him playing games. I didn't play it myself. So, but the minute people talk about the C64, I can go in and I can tell you what game was programmed by who and all this kind of stuff. I have got a decent knowledge of it. And there's only so many ways you can present the same game. Do you just play it then play it again and play it again? So what you do is you think, well, let's do a video on the 10 worst Commodore 64 games. Let's do a video on 10 games that are absolutely fantastic that you've probably never heard of. You bring in people like yourself. You bring in people like Lycosa, who's a grumpy face old bastard, and it makes people like to see bit of conflict and arguments and people moaning and swearing and that. It just makes it interesting. So I'm always trying to think up new things. I'll do a thing called, well, I mean, one of my earliest ones, which is still really popular, but I'm kind of running out of ideas, is the Arcade Perfect My Arses. There's lots of people do these now. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't copy anybody. There are other channels that have done similar. But I come up with my own name. That's where I play an arcade game and then I look at home versions. The Kerfuffles is where I just look at a game that's come out for multiple systems and I look at them all and then I, in my own infinite wisdom, decide what is the best version. But it's trying to keep it fresh. It's trying to keep it fresh, and that can sometimes be a problem. Sometimes, and that and like yourself, Robert, who's one of a mutual friend of ours. So I've enjoyed watching your little videos where you play games. Your friends nominate a game, and because they're like 10, 20 minutes, and that's like the perfect chunk size video that I like because it works. It works for me, and so I'm trying to kind of get back to my roots a wee bit and just start playing games again and having fun. Because keep it fresh. But as far to go back and answer your question, apart from the Friday waffle. And what was the other thing I talked about? Can't remember. No, all these ideas have been my own. Some have worked. A lot of them haven't. But it's just thinking of different ways you can talk about a video. I did one about the history of the videotape loader. As far as I'm concerned, nobody else has done a video like that. I did one about growing up as an 18-year-old during the Cold War. Things like Beachhead and Raid Over Moscow and Theatre Europe, and just it comes back to be yourself. If you're likable, if you're a likable person, people are going to watch you. How many videos have you going to watch, and then you realise the guy's a complete knobhead because he tells you to smash the like button, hit the bell so you can thing me, and if you really want to, you can click on the Patreon and support this. Fuck off, honestly. You know what I mean? Just fuck off.
Yeah, that annoys me as well, to be quite honest. I will say this though, because about something that just before we move on, is that I do think that actually though you are quite adaptable and you do sort of like do a little bit more than a cut-off point of saying, right, mega drives and all of that sort of stuff, because you're very popular with your Sunday streams that you still do. And I do see the joy and the fun that you have when somebody like comes along and goes, oh, here's a Steam game, and you'll go, oh, I've just played this and it takes me back to all of those early days when I was playing Ridge Racer and all of this sort of stuff. So as much as you say, there's a cut-off point and people really don't want to see me do this, I will say, but there's a 10% in you that goes, but I do actually like new stuff, and I do like sometimes to show that new stuff off, but it has to be sort of like one toe in the past a little bit, I don't want it to be this modern games with a narrative, because I find that boring, or and I'm totally in agreement with you that certain modern games just turn me off.
I do try and do stuff that kind of nobody else has done. You're never going to see me playing the next Call of Duty and doing a stream, whatever. I know lots of people do that. One thing that you just kind of when you were talking, it got me thinking about trying to keep it kind of fresh, and the most important thing is you've got to enjoy the process of making videos. If it stops being fun, people are going to pick up on that and it's not going to work. You've got to have fun. There are times where it's not fun because there's pressures that are going on in your life, whatever. But one of the things that I do love doing, and I've been very, very lucky, and I think it sounds like I'm bigging myself up here, but I think I'm quite unique with this respect, is I have had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of people on my channel over a number of videos, and it's being able to speak to like people that you were aware of that made games that you played as a kid, having the ability to have them on and speak to them one-on-one is fantastic. And
Well, I
you
think they
know,
count you as friends really now,
oh,
rather
some of them.
than rather than an interview with someone. You know, they actually go, "Oh, yeah, all right, Alan," you know, and basically it's like that, as if they're in a pub.
There's a few of them. I mean, I'm not going to go dropping any names, but yeah, there's a few of them that I've had on that many times that, I mean, they'll like posts on Facebook and vice versa, whatever. But it's been fantastic, and I, I, I suppose if I was to be good at any one thing, I'm probably good at talking to people. People have said to me that I've got quite a good ability to put people at ease and all that, which is a nice thing to see. And I think maybe it's a Scottish trait. We're able to talk. I love talking to people, and obviously it kind of culminated. And I'm not going to say that it was a highlight, but you know, being able to sit in front of maybe 200, 250 people with John Romero sitting next to you, and it's just me and him. These 250 people, they're relying on me to ask the questions that they want me to ask them. So I've been very, very fortunate to have the chance, the opportunity to speak to people like that.
Yeah,
But then I've had John here, I've had bloody Jeff Minter, I've had Richard Leinfelder, who made Cauldron, Andy Walker, who did loads of them, so many. Kevin Toms has been on the channel. I mean, you were my kind of co-pilot for the last charity stream, and
stream,
I still, and I don't give a shit if anybody thinks you're a fucking big-headed tosser. I still think that these two charity streams that we've done are two of the finest retro video game videos you'll ever get, because in the 24 hours, if you put them both together, you've got who's who in the retro scene. You've got Gary Liddon, you've got Gary Penn, you've got Martin Brown from 17-bit Software, you've got, or Team 17, I should say. Who else? You've got Sean Southern, Kickstart. All these guys, brilliant. You know, I mean, Tony Temple. All these guys,
yeah,
Dabney Experience. It's fantastic. And so yeah, talking to people. I mean, I would love to be like the Parkinson of like talking to people. My girlfriend says to me I should have a second channel where I interview people out with video games. Again, you've got to have an interest in what you're. I'm very, very comfortable when it comes to video games, so I can just wing it and talk. So that's been one side to YouTube.
I've only got a couple more sort of like, and but by the way, I must just turn around and say that the first time you did your charity thing, I think Panther did an absolute wonderful job. I mean, I miss the little sod, really, to be quite honest. He's not around as much anymore.
No,
I don't get to chat to him.
He's enjoying
the little sod. But I've just got to just turn around and there's a couple of things really that have just been on my mind a little bit, and that is that I think, and this isn't a bad thing, it's just I think sometimes you've come across a little bit like I feel guilty because I'm not putting videos out, and all I just want to say to that is that we love it when you do, and we love your live streams, but do you feel guilt? And the other thing is that we all know that YouTube is a fun thing. You don't do this for money. You do it because there's a passion for it. Do you think that there's an addiction to YouTube?
Yeah, definitely. To answer your first point, do I feel guilty? I did. In the early days, not early days, I did in maybe like 3-4 years ago. The really weird thing for me is when I was living in a house with my daughter and my wife at the time, I put out more videos then. Now you can take for that what you will. I was spending more time on my hobby. Even though I had less time, I spent more time doing that. and then when I became single, living on my own, my daughter lives with me. Living on my own, I've suddenly got all this spare time, and I kind of have less time to do videos, and I think it's probably because I suppose if you're in a relationship with somebody, you're sharing a house, what you're not going to be able to do if you want to retain that relationship is say, right, I'm away off out tonight. Oh, I'm away. Oh, you're out last night. Well, stuff you. I'm going out tonight, and I'll be out tomorrow, and I'm going out on Friday and Saturday. You know, you would end up it wouldn't work. So I suppose in some ways I could do this hobby when, you know, she was sat in front of the TV watching Strictly Come Celebrity Get Me Out of Here bollocks. I would go upstairs and record videos. Now, because I've kind of got the freedom, I can decide that I'm going to go out tonight, I'm going to play pool tonight, or, you know, when I did my cook school, I could go to my martial arts, and I can go to my mate's house, or I can go for it out on the bike. I've now got more freedom, and I want to do other things. But I do. So I don't feel I know that I haven't done I don't do as many videos as I did like maybe 5 years ago. It'd actually be interesting. Maybe I wouldn't want to hear what they had to say if I was to ask somebody who's been watching my channel for a long time and say, you know, think back. You probably wouldn't even be able to remember it. Think back to like 5, 6, 7 years ago when I was doing regular, you know, arcades, perfect my arse and a kerfuffle, and, you know, I was putting out these videos. That was the year that was 1984 Commodore 64. I mean, I put out one of these about 6 months ago, and it took me fucking hours. I think there was about 120 games that I played. It took me forever. I'd be interested to hear what somebody that's been watching my channel for such a long time, did you prefer my channel then, or have you accepted that it's kind of evolved a wee bit and
Yeah.
it's now you get a live stream and you still get the, what a lot I keep saying about I'm going to stop the waffle, and I do still mean that. You know, you've got to be in the mood for it, but I do enjoy. It's like you with your blog, Dale. I enjoy doing a waffle. I enjoy playing games. There's something you don't do it for. I don't know what it is. It gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling in your tummy. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen some of the. I mean, I saw a comment. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You probably saw the comment. One of the comments was about he made a mention about he finds nothing better than to relax when he's to relax. He says listening to a Steve or Delboy stream. Now I don't know whether
Oh.
that's because he can't get to sleep, so maybe it's a fucking dumb, maybe it's a backsided insult. I don't know, but you know when you read a comment like that about your channel,
Yeah.
it just goes.
Humble. You feel
It's
humbled, don't you?
yeah. You think just little old me, you know that someday somewhere out there is enjoying what you do, because we're just two regular blokes.
Well,
But I
I
don't.
mean, I've got a
Yeah,
thought about it though, Alan, and I will say this: as terrestrial TV diminishes and as streaming stuff becomes costly, um, I think a lot of people now are watching YouTube, and they look at the days and they go, do you know what? Nothing ever happens on a Tuesday. Nothing happens on a Wednesday. I've got to find something that I've got to do to watch, because
mm-hmm.
I ain't watching that Strictly Come Bollocks on and all of this sort of stuff. And therefore YouTube has now become a channel as much as
Yeah,
BBC is, really.
yeah, absolutely. And I think and the people, we've got a lot of like common footfall people that watch my channel, watch your channel, and we've also got other people that don't, whatever. But you've got regular videos that you put out. I've got regular content, and I think people like routine.
Yeah.
I'm that person that you talk about. I tend not to watch much in the way of TV. I'll just put YouTube on, whatever. So yeah, people do like routine, and so knowing that on a Friday they can watch the Friday Waffle, and a Sunday they've got your blog and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's nice.
Yep. So I've got one last question, and then we must get cracking on because I'm looking at the time. Looking at your own personality, do you think you suffer at all, even if it's just a small amount of FOMO, fear of missing out?
Fear of missing out with regards to anything
Just in your
particular?
personality, it could be about gaming, it could be about videos, it could be. Is there in you something that goes, "Oh, I've got to get this because I have got a fear of missing out. I want it. I want it now. I don't want to miss out," etc., etc.
I probably used to.
Just as a personality trait, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, I probably used to have that. I mean, when it comes to like buying stuff, yeah, I don't play golf. I don't have any expensive hobbies. Um, when 10 years ago when like the first handheld came out, or like the PSP came out, I thought, oh, I want to get one. So I was an early adopter of them. I mean, like the classic example was I signed up to the Spectrum Next Kickstarter, and
Yeah,
oh, it's great, and I got it, and then I never used it, and I sold it, and I ended up buying it again. But anyway, that's another thing. But no, in the main, I don't. And this is the funny thing, considering that I've got a channel that is primarily video games.
yeah,
I'm really out of touch with what's going on in the scene. If I'm being honest, I'm really not interested in what's going on in the scene. I'm not interested in a mini, I don't know, whatever. A Tatung Einstein. I'm not interested if they're bringing out a mini one of these, or I'm not interested if they're bringing out a PS5 Slim or the
no,
next gen. I'm bored. I mean, you could probably sort of what was I going to say? You could probably relate to this. I've bought stuff in the past where like I'm trying to think what example. I've bought tech maybe in the last 3-4 years, and it arrives from Amazon. You go, oh great, and then it just sits there for a couple of days, and I better open it. And you've got no interest. You don't get excited about anything. And
mm,
the number when I sold my Spectrum Next. I was never using it, and then I got it. I just had this thing about, I want to get one again, and I bought another one. But the number of people that are selling like Spectrum Next, and it's not just the Spectrum Next. It can apply to anything. But people were saying that they were so excited about getting it, and it was anticipation of getting it. But when it arrived, they're like, I'm not actually interested in using it. It was just
yeah,
it was the
yeah,
build up.
mm,
I suppose it's a bit like I'm not a fan of Christmas. I used to when I was a kid, but yeah, like the build up to Christmas,
yeah.
or the build
Mm.
up to going on holiday. And sometimes that's true in life. The excitement and anticipation, or to quote a Rocky Horror, anticipation. Um, yeah,
Rocky
it's
Horror, yeah.
Rocky Horror. I can't remember. Was that Tim Rice? Was it?
Yeah, that's Frankenfurter, yeah. Mm.
Anticipation. Don't know where that came from. Anyway, yeah, sometimes just the excitement and the anticipation for something outweighs when you actually get it. You go, and then you just go, right.
Yeah.
It's a
I'll tell
weird
you
thing.
what I'll tell you what I think fear of missing out is. It's another word it's another word for jealousy. And I will turn around and I will say, hand on my heart, yeah, I'm jealous. It's not fear of missing out to me, you see, because of the thing. There's so many fingers that I've got in my pies. I will turn around and go, oh yeah, I've got to have the Terminator 2 Steelbook because I've got to have it before anybody else. And it could be, and it can even go into, I realized that my friends have actually been doing cross country running while I haven't, and I feel like I want to get back into that. I'm really jealous that they're doing that. I'm missing out on something, so I need to sort of like do that. Or even when we were talking the other day, you'd gone down to the cave. I'm going, do you know what? I'm dead jealous of that. I wanted to go. I'm excited. I really want to do that. It's a fear of missing out, and to be quite honest, I'm learning in myself. Don't get stressed about it. Don't get so het up about this, Del. Why are you doing that? There's time. There's time enough for you
Yeah.
to do this, and I think that I'm starting to become impatient, and I therefore go, oh, if it doesn't happen the next 3 months, in the next month, then I'm not going to be asked about it anymore. And that's what I was talking about, fear of missing out as a personality, because it might be with you. You go, do you know what? I haven't done that 100-mile run in a long time, and my friends have been doing that. And I really fancy doing that, and that's you going. I want to relive those days, and I've seen my friends have done it, and therefore I want to go back and do it. And that in some ways is a fear of missing out.
I've had, absolutely. I've had that with running. You know, I was a pretty mental mad runner for about 12 years, and then just my kind of health a wee bit. I was unable to run, and for a long time, I would just get. It doesn't help when you get Facebook memories popping up, pictures of me finishing a 50-odd mile run, and I'm like, Christ, I couldn't run the length of myself now. So I do get that. It's like yearning from the past a wee bit, but I don't have a fear of missing out as regards to buying stuff or whatever. I used to, but not really, not so much.
And it's why I said personality. You know, anything in your personality, have you got a fear of missing out as a personality trait? And I think all of us do. I think we've all got to turn around and say at some point, FOMO is just another word of jealousy. If you don't have jealousy in you at some point, then basically you're not a human being as far as I'm concerned. Because as far as, you know, but we must get on, Alan. You know what this podcast is all about because you bloody well designed it. So from what I can remember of memory, you are on an island, and basically there is just you there, and we've set some rules. And in those rules is that you are only allowed to have, out of the thousands of games that you've played or are out there, you're only allowed to have 3 games that you really want to play. They are what we call the nice games. And then there are 3 games that you can wipe from existence. They could be games that basically have started off a trend that you don't like, or it could be that they're the biggest pile of crap that you could actually see. I want to know, first of all, the nice, which is 3 games and these are the only 3 games you're going to be able to play that you would take onto this island, and knowing that these 3 are the only ones that you can bring with you. So what would be your first game?
Now, I have to say, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, welcome to our world when you've asked us this.
I mean, I've actually written down 4 for my nice games.
And you're only allowed 3, so tough shit.
Yeah, I know. And I've had my nasty games. I've had a couple that scored out, and then I've rewritten it back in again. So, right, the first game I'm going to pick. It's probably been picked by other people. It's not going to come as any real surprise. It is 100% the most difficult game you will ever likely play. It's an arcade game that came out very, very early on, programmed by Williams and a guy called Eugene Jarvis, and it's a Defender. It's a game, I says, it's been mentioned in quite a few, without any spoilers, but it's cropped up quite a few times. It is the quintessential video game, and I was talking to one of my interviewees in a fairly recent Nice and Nasty, and I was saying to him, it says, you know, you hear of people, you know, playing whatever it is, I don't know, they've played the latest Zelda and they've completed it 4 times and It says if you were to go into Facebook and if you were to go into a Facebook page that's all about retro games and you put down that I've just completed the latest Zelda game, you would be lucky if anybody even commented on it, because nobody gives a shit. Fucking big deal. Oh, you've completed I don't know, you've completed The Last of Us, and nobody gives a shit. You go on a classic video games thing and say that I've just put up 2.4 million in Defender. Whoa, brah, you're the main man. It is like the Rolls Royce of games. It is the most difficult game ever, and it's a game that I completely avoided playing for many years because it was just so intimidating. I mean, there's an up down button. There's an up and down joystick. There's a reverse. There's a thrust. there's a fire, there's a hyperspace. What else? Yeah, there's something like 8 keys, and that's an arcade game. Bearing in mind, this came out when you had Space Invaders or Pac-Man, which just had a joystick. Berserk had up, down, left, right, and fire. This had like 8 keys, and it's like learning to go a bike or driving a car. You've got to practice and practice and practice. And I was lucky enough to buy a cabinet which belonged to a friend of mine's who happens to be an exceptional defender player, a guy called Paul Spriggs. And this cabinet actually came with the proper defender controls. And I've spent quite a bit of time practicing the game. I'm still shite at it. I can maybe get to like the 3rd level, but I can now actually navigate it. And the reason I've picked it is because you'll never ever tire off it. It just kicks your arse constantly. It's a phenomenal game. It's, you know, the graphics, the sound. It's one of these games. If you walked into any arcade back in the early 1980s, you can bet your bottom dollar that you would hear Defender. It's just the noise of it when you start the game. It's just a phenomenal game, and you're always going to have that high score that you can beat, you know, get to the next level. I don't know if it crashes, you know, like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody can tell me that. But yeah, it's just a game. It's a fantastic game. I mean, a couple of months ago, I had a guy. He was in my house sandpapering my kitchen worktop. I mean, he was getting paid to do it, and I've got my Defender cabinet in my kitchen, and he clocked this. He went, "Oh my god, I've never seen that in years." And I had to bloody end up banning, right? You know, you're not playing anymore. Fucking get on with what you're getting paid to do my worktops. And he's still, if I switch my Defender cabinet on, it's fucking his initials. He's got about the first 5 initials on it.
Yeah.
But it's a phenomenal game. It'll kick your arse. It's like, it's the video games personified.
Yeah.
Greatest video game, bar none.
Yeah, there's no complaints from me. And I think that when many people talk about iconic games, or, you know, even if you're just talking about arcades here, that's an iconic, quintessential, well-respected game. And I think that there's a beauty in simplisticness. You know, I mean, it's not got the most fantastic visuals, although they're quite stunning in what they do. But it's one of those things that I think it's a double-edged sword with Defender. It like you say, it's intimidating, but it entices you in because it looks very much like you could take control of this. Now, I've grown to love Defender, but only from a point of view of when I've been able to play it in MAME more than anything. I remember seeing it in the arcade. I'd put my money in it. I'd last 30 seconds. And I didn't have an awful lot of money for me to keep putting money in to play it. I'd have loved to have been able to. So what do you think was the draw then of that game, with it being so difficult, you know, with the control system, like you were saying? I mean, you'd have to have quite some money, wouldn't you, to actually get anywhere in it?
I think it is. I mean, you're right. If you take the sprites or the graphics, they're very, very simplistic. But just it's very, very minimalist. It's got a black screen, and the what really sets it apart from any other kind of shooter game is the laser. It isn't just a little bullet that comes out. It's like a laser, a straight line laser. Yeah, and it breaks up, it fragments. It's really beautiful looking. It's a stunning looking game. It sounds, and again, I never grew up in arcades, but I can imagine as a teenager or a kid seeing this game for the first time, you're like, wow. Because I mean, what did you have? You had Space Invaders, you had probably Asteroids. This was something else. It was so noisy. It was like, it was chaotic, and it would just draw you in. You're like, Christ, it only lasted like 15 seconds, and you've got the impulse to put another 10p in and get better at it. So yeah, it just drew you in. It's such a beautiful game, and you know, the reward.
I suppose I was thinking more along the lines of 30 seconds, 10 pence per 30 seconds. I've got £1. 10 times 30 seconds is not very long.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to get at. And then you go, that's all I've got is £1 a week pocket money. How the hell am I going to be able to continue playing that game next week? Because I'm not going to get any better. So what was it that, I mean, it must be people that were rich then that were able to sort of like do this then. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose there are some people who are just better. They've just got a natural ability to play any video games. There's an article which I'll need to share at some point, which was written by one of my friends. It was all about. He talks about when he used to go down to Blackpool, and you use the clicker, and which is a little device you could put free credits in. And so I'm sure there was a bit of that went on. But I suppose you would have your £1. I mean, I think the people that probably got really good at video games were people who lived nearby the arcades, and so probably instead of spending their 50 pence on a sandwich and a cake
chips,
for a bag of chips at lunchtime, you probably just got a packet of crisps and went to the arcades and spent your 40 pence, and then you'd steal money out your mum's purse and go to the arcades, and you would just you had to get better, and I think that's one of the sort of slight downsides to things like MAME. Whilst it's the greatest piece of software ever written, bar none, it's infinite credits. So it's easy to kind of just sort of be quite blasé when you're playing games.
I'm forgetting a little bit here is that as much as arcades could be looked upon as being a singular person going in, I used to go in with my mates because I used to go. We used to have a traveling fair, and so I'd go down with my mates, and we'd both sit at the machine, and we'd go, right, your go, my go. And I suppose if you're by a seaside where there's arcades all like this, one of you is going to come across and find out a technique, and then you'd learn that technique because we all watched them. That's the thing. I think the thing I used to love about arcades is I was taking in the sounds, I was taking in the sights, and with my money, we'd go on the machines and I'd watch my buddy play it, and I'd go, I'm going to have a go now, and I'd have seen what he did, and I'd have took that in and played it myself and tried to do better. So that must have been part of parcel.
You're right, though, and I mean, part of the allure of the arcades wasn't just focused on actually playing the game. If you didn't have any money, you would just stand and look. You would look at the track mode. You would stand and watch other people playing it, and then if you did have 10 pence, you put it into Galaxy, and you were like you were actually nervous because it's like it just wanted to end the game, and you're like, oh, you were like panicking because you thought once I lose my last man, that's it. I'm back to just looking at the track mode, and so I can imagine for people who did live near arcades. They wanted to get better, and they would get better because there was obviously pressure on them to not lose their life.
Well, you like it. Jeff Binder likes it. I like it. And I think there's quite a bit of part of the world that loves that game. So we're locking that one in, Alan. That's definite a Hall of Famer from my point of view.
Yeah.
So that's there. It's on the island, in its own little cabinet. So we move on. What is your second nice game that you're going to have on this island?
It sounds a bit daft that I'm going to pick this, considering I've not played it in years and years and years and years and years. But there's a reason for it, and the reason being is because I've now got access to like thousands of games. But it was a game that came out in about 1995. It was originally a demo on Amiga Power, and me and my mate played this demo and we played it until the local piracy place got it, and then we got a copy of it. And it's a game by a chap that I've had the pleasure of interviewing. In fact, I've got a photograph of you and him together at Zap Live. A guy called John Hare. Used to be him and Chris Yates, Sensible Software, a game called Sensei Soccer. Now,
Right.
the one that I'm going for is the World of Sensible Soccer, or Sensible World of Soccer, as they called it. I'm not a football fan in the slightest, but this really bears no resemblance to football at all. It was There was just something about the game, the minuscule graphics, the simplistic graphics, but the playability was just incredible. And me and my mates played it and played it and played it. Then eventually we bought it. We bought it on we bought it on from a pirate, and then eventually there was about 3 or 4 different versions, and then they brought out the World of Sensible World of Soccer, and it had it's you could play in God knows how many hundreds of leagues, the players, everything about it. You could play these different knockouts, etc., etc. The hours and hours and hours that I lost playing this game, and just it was phenomenal. You could rename players. I mean, you could do things like you could have like custom teams, so you're playing as like car parts versus fast food. So you've got like doner kebab in goals. You've got Vindaloo Curry playing like centre back. Up front, you've got double cheeseburger and you've got Big Mac in the centre, and it's just ridiculous. But it was just, as I says, it was the I don't know what it was. It was like one of these lightning in a bottle. They pulled together a game that appealed to not only just football fans, it appealed to people who like myself who weren't football fans, and it was so addictive. And when I was playing it back in the day, you could create leagues where you would play a game, and then it'd be your mate's turn to play his game. And what we used to do, I used to take it to work. I would play the game, not at work, I'd play it at home, save it, take it into work the following day, give it to my mate. He would go home, he would play his couple of matches, save it, and it was like mail order football. But it's just great. And the reason I've picked that is because it's like an infinite game. There were so many levels. I mean, you're playing against like Stenhousemuir and Cowdenbeath and Brighton and Hove Albion. They were absolutely shit. And then you ended up getting like AC Milan and Barcelona, and it's such a wonderful game. And it's the reason it's not only it's by far and away the best football game. It's there has been a sequel came out called Sociable Soccer.
Yeah.
It's a nice game, not a patch in Sensible Soccer. I hate to say that, but
Yeah.
it's just a phenomenal game. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours playing the game, and I know if I didn't have anything else to play, there's one stipulation: it would have to be the Commodore Amiga one. It can't be any other version. Commodore Amiga version of Sensible World of Soccer.
Yeah. So I mean, we all know of conflicts that we had when we were at school. I've got a Commodore, you've got a Spectrum, Commodore versus Spectrum. Like a 64 versus Spectrum, and of course even with Amigas and Atari STs. And I think Sensible Soccer was up against Kickoff, if I can remember rightly. Paul Dini, or I think his name wasn't it, that did that? Dino, that's it. Yeah. Like I say, you're much better with names than I am. So, what is it about? Do you think that that sort of like makes it superior to Kickoff? Because there would be, I'm pretty sure, even though we'd moved away from school at that point. What do you think it is about the people that went, oh no, Kickoff's better and no, Sense is better? What is it because of the similarities or what?
Well, I think to be fair, the original Kickoff came out first, and then Sensible Soccer came along. I was a big fan of Kickoff. I can't remember who. There's a few people that I know that will always take Kickoff over Sensible Soccer. I think the dribbling is more realistic. It's completely different game mechanics. And in fact, I mean, I'd imagine it's probably still going on. You still get, well, I'm saying that, I've not checked, but I know certainly up to a few years ago, they have the World Kickoff Championships. And one of my friends, a guy called Mark, he actually went across to represent England in the kickoff.
Wow.
It's still very much a thing. But Sensei Soccer, they took the same overhead viewpoint, and then obviously they zoomed out so you could see more of the pitch. The thing about kickoff is you can't always see who you're passing to. I think there was an arrow, so it would give you an indication of where you're passing.
Yeah,
Kickoff was
yeah.
a great game, and I think if Sensi Soccer hadn't come along, I would have still stuck with kickoff. Kickoff 2 came along, and then Sensi Soccer came along, and it's an easier game to play, and there's a bit of a pattern in the games that I pick that I like. It's because they're quite easy, because I'm brilliant at games and enjoy it so much. But saying that, Sensible Software did bring out a game called Microprose Soccer on the Commodore 64, which predated Kickoff, and that was I'm going to say a blatant rip-off of Tekken World Cup, which was an overhead football game, and it used a trackball to control your players, and you used to get. I had a really sore wrist, and it was nothing to do with what you're thinking. It was due to playing that bloody Tekken, typical teenager.
I'm sure you think my mind's in the gutter, but go on, yeah.
We all had sore wrists down to playing the Tekken World Cup. So yeah, to be fair, Sensible Software did bring out Microprose Soccer, and then Kickoff came along it came out originally, I think it was for the Atari ST, and then it came out in the Amiga, and then I think it eventually came out in the 8-bits as well, and even the Game Boy of all things. But I'm going to say excuse me, I'm going to say the purists probably prefer Kickoff, whereas the more social kind of like sociable, hence the reason sociable soccer players, the Sensi Soccer was an easier game to play. I just like the game mechanics better. They're two completely different football games.
Just quickly then, Alan, if you were to look at the two games, which one's got the better computer controlled player then? Because remember, you're on this island by yourself.
Well, yeah, Sensi Soccer, when you play the big teams, they put up a serious competition. Sensi Soccer is probably it's simplified football, because you can go pass, score. You can literally score in maybe 5 seconds. You couldn't do that on Kickoff. It's more. I think Kickoff is more realistic than Sensi Soccer. But yeah, I think that's what made it. You could get a casual player coming along, picking up a joystick and having fun with Sensible Soccer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, a fantastic choice. I remember going back to the early days on the Commodore 64, playing Commodore International Soccer and loving that. And,
well, that was my first introduction to football. Yeah,
and I'm a little bit like you. When I moved over to the Amiga, there was another football game, and it was going to be either Kickoff or Sensible Soccer. So, I mean, basically, there's been soccer all the way through, sort of like my computer life. And even when you get to consoles, there's been that ISS soccer. And I think that the only bad thing I can say about football, really, and computers and stuff, is I just cannot stand FIFA, and I don't like its militarized system and all of this sort of stuff. As far as I'm concerned, we will be talking about Sensible Soccer in 10 years' time, and I think in due course, nobody's going to be talking about FIFA anymore. It'll be that has-been game that people played, and that's where I hope it ends, because I think it's a victim of its own success in the fact that you're just money grabbing gits now. It should be more updates now to something on this, not a brand new game that you fork out nearly £100 on. So spot on. I'm really glad about that. I think I would be hard pushed to choose between a golf game and a football game on my island, because I think I'm a bit more rubbish at golf, and it'd be me against the course, and I think the course always wins eventually. So we've locked that one in as well. So absolutely fantastic. So third sweet game that you're going to be having on this island, please.
It was a close. I've got two here, and my heart is telling me to go with this one, and my brain's telling me to go with this one, and I'm going to have to go with my brain.
Yeah, what's your ass telling you?
I'm going to tell you what my fourth place one, which narrowly missed out, Super Pipeline 2.
Oh,
The reason it would have been my fourth place game, which I appreciate I can't take, is because it's probably the game that is most fun to play. It never ceases to make me smile. It makes me happy playing the game. I know there's not many levels. It's got little interlude scenes and that. It's a phenomenal game. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to talk about it because it's not been picked. But yeah, the game that's going to be number 3. It's another arcade game. It's a game that I got into right when I first saw it. There's been various incarnations of this game over the years. Sadly, it's a genre game that just doesn't get any love anymore. Nobody really plays these games. I don't know why. It'd be interesting to know why people don't do it. I think it's probably because people have become too sophisticated.
yeah.
And it was a game that inspired a game on the ZX Spectrum, which apparently the guy who put his name to it never made a penny. And
Oh.
that game was solely responsible, apparently, for trashing more Kempston joysticks than any other game. You know what game I'm talking about? It's Track and Field by Konami.
Oh, yeah. What a game. So your love of this and the reason why, Alan?
It's kind of twofold. One of my dad, I mean, my dad's been dead for quite a long time now, sadly. He used to play rugby. He used to go jogging. He always kept himself very fit. And in the early 80s, there was they called it a trim track. It was like a little path with wood chips.
Yeah.
It was maybe about half a mile round in a circle, and dotted along this path, they had different exercises. You had to like bench press and do press ups and all this kind of stuff. And this was like the early 80s. This was when, dare I say, Jimmy Savile was going out and running marathons, and they were trying to encourage you to get fit and take up jogging. And the London Marathon had just become a thing, and people were wanting to get into fitness. So my dad and I used to go along a couple of times a week, and we'd run round the trim track, and we both had our tracksuits on, and we were both fanatics of like the athletics. Your Sebastian Coe, Steve Cram, Steve Ovett, Alan Wells, all these guys. I've still got some real happy memories on a Friday night. It would be like the Dream Mile from Oslo. Steve Cram's going to try and break the world record, and it was phenomenal. It was I get goosebumps just talking about it. And then there was a film that came out. I think it was early 80s. You'd be able to probably tell me exactly when it was, called Chariots of Fire, which charted the story between Harold Abraham and Eric Liddell. Eric Liddell was a Scottish athlete who was he famously he turned down he turned down the option to run in the qualifiers in the Paris Olympic Games because it fell on the Sabbath, which was a Sunday, and he ended up taking part in another race and won it. But Chariots of Fire is one of my go-to films. It's about running, but I think it's such an inspiring story, and again, it just brings back so many happy memories when I see I can't when I hear that tune by Vangelis in the beach scene. It's such a powerful piece of motion video or motion film, whatever you want to call it. And anyway,
Oscar-winning film, yeah,
it was, and it's like one of these films that I still do watch from time to time. I'll never ever get bored of watching it. And Track and Field came out in arcades, and it's got the theme tune to Chariots of Fire. So the fact that it was about running, it's got the theme tune. It's just, it's a. Even back then I was going out running and that. So it was it was a sport. It was a game that replicated my real life at that point. I was going out running. I would take part in races and things, and being able to play the track and field, and just I have got a competitive spirit in me. I love to like compete against myself. Whether it's when I was running, you'd want to try and do a 10k faster the next time, you try and get PBs. And track and field's got this wonderful mechanic where it'd store your high scores. You know, there was I think 6 events that you took place in. Just great. And it's if I'm ever in one of these arcades or like arcade club or wherever it might be, play Blackpool, if there's a track and field, I will just make a beeline for it. And I don't mind admitting when I go down to these games, I can usually get the high score. If I play it in the morning, I guarantee if I go back to later on, my score will still be number one. There's guys like John Studley who are like phenomenal. He'll wipe the floor of me, but it's a game that I'm actually pretty good at, and I just love it to bits. It's just, and it's a game that I could play on my desert island. I would be trying to beat my best score. It would always be something that you're competing against yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a fun game as well, and it's one of those ones as well that your friend would come across would do something weird in it, and you'd find that there's an Easter egg, like you fire the javelin up into the sky, and either a satellite had come down or a bird or something, and all sorts of stuff that was going on. But it's quite like what you were saying. There was that cracking tune, Vangelis, but then there was also speech in it as well, and the speech was there. And I remember when I was playing track and field, I was at the height of me loving track and field type games was the time when the Olympics was on, and I was thinking to myself, this is about the only way that I'm ever going to be Daley Thompson. I can tell you that now. And like I say, no two games are really going to be the same, because you've got to hold the button down for angles, and if you get a sticky button, or you put too much pressure on or too little pressure on, you're not going to hit that sweet spot. So every time you go round this, it's going to be different. So I think that's a cracking title to bring in.
So many, and that is like a lot of video games, arcade games. There's so many little, not even so much Easter eggs, but like nuances. If you do things a certain way, for example, in the long jump, to get the longest jump, you've actually got to hit the toe board, the white toe board. So if you do it in your first go and you hit the toe board, you'll maybe get 8 meters. If you hit the toe board in your second go, you'll get it even bigger. But if you don't hit it in your first go and then hit it in your second go, you'll only get 8 meters. So it's things like that. You've got to hit it like, to get your best one, you've got to have hit it like twice. Things like that. One of the things I didn't realize until, when I say fairly recently, maybe about 10 years ago, when you're doing the high jump, is you're actually going up the way. If you hammer the buttons, that takes you up higher. I didn't realize that. When you're throwing the javelin, when the javelin's in midair, keep tapping the buttons. You don't have to go that fast. That gives you additional power. There's so many little nuances about the games that you learn all the time. It's a fantastic game. I'm still learning how to play it. It's brilliant.
And of course, it's got a cracking hyper sports. We can't miss talking about that. But even I would choose track and field over that. And I'll tell you the other thing that's quite interesting about it: when the home athletic type games came out, I learned an awful lot about animation through things like David Crane's Activision's version of Decathlon. The running and the seeing how frames of animation work for legs. I constantly just watched the little running, of the demonstration. Wow, how many frames has this got? It's about 10, and it loops around. Wow, that's great. So we got that one in. I mean, I don't think anybody can complain about having that in there, and there is a randomness about it that means that there's an endless game play in that one. Absolutely fantastic. But unfortunately, we have to put a dark side on everything. We are going over now to wet and rainy and windy, sort of like dark clouds abode, because we're going to move into the nasty side of games. Now, these are games that you want to see wiped off the face of the planet for whatever reason that you're going to fill us in on. Thousands of games, Alan. What's your first game that you want wiped off this earth?
Yeah, this was a hard decision, trying to narrow it down and pick games and go, and I don't want that. Oh, I do that. And I've picked a game, and it's it's not just that game. It's that time. It represents quite a number of games that came out at that point. It was a game that was came out in arcades, and it was a phenomenal. It was a game changer. People still wax lyrical about it today. It's a phenomenal game. It's never really aged at all. And it was, we had just been introduced to 16-bit machines. I had just got an Atari ST at that point. And of course, the magazines, this was all pre-internet, the magazines would say, oh, US Gold have just got the license for blah, 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 and it's getting converted by blah, 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 blah. And you, oh, can't wait for it, can't wait for it. And then you'd get a photograph would appear, and you, oh, look at that. That looks just like the arcade. And this game was announced. I think it was coming out by, I think it was US Gold. And it was a home port of Outrun. And more specifically, it was Outrun on the Atari ST. The static graphics on the game looked incredible. It was like, wow, the graphics couldn't have been done on an 8-bit. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get to play. Like, I was still playing it in arcades, and suddenly I was going to be able to play it at home, have Outrun in the arcade Outrun at home. Don't have to pay any money for it. And I was so eagerly waiting in this game coming out. There would be more and more screenshots with the surf and the blue waves, the beautiful, sunny sky and the Testarossa, and it just looked phenomenal. Oh, this is going to be brilliant. And then I went up to Ray's computer shop, who was an Atari dealer, and I'm like, Ray, have you got Outrun? Oh, yeah. Oh, can I try it? Yeah. And he put it on, and it starts off. You get the loading screen, which was like at the very start, where you see the car underneath the sort of like the guy with the flag ready to wave. You've got all the crowd. You've got the guy with the flag, and it was just a static screen. I thought, oh, this is going to be brilliant. And then the game started, and it's just, my jaw just hit the floor. I'm like, I was just gutted how god awful this game was. It was awful. I've never experienced such a disappointment in a video game than I did when I ended up not buying it for obvious reasons. When I saw Outrun on the Atari ST, I think it was actually converted by Sega themselves, and it used this horrible, clunky kind of. It was back in the time where the mouse was like the mouse was this like real futuristic control, and so they would use the mouse for like, you would play the game with the joystick, but you'd have to use the mouse to do selection, go up to file, new
That's
game.
Right. There's a menu at the top of the
screen.
Yeah,
you could turn the sound on and off and all this. And I don't know why they used the mouse for it.
Looks so out of place, that menu. I was going,
It just made it clunky. And it was just awful. But it's not just, that game was the personal one that really just hit me hard. I thought it just crashed and burned. Looking at it now, it doesn't look as bad, but I think that's because I can now play that arcade. I can now load up Outrun in the arcade and play it. So it's a bit of a novelty to go back and play the Atari ST. But bear in mind, MAME wasn't a thing back in 1987. So I had all my eggs in one basket. The only way I was going to get to play Outrun was on my Atari ST, and it was awful. And I think what made it even worse was the sound chip in the ST, particularly in that game, was just crap. I had gone from the SID chip in the Commodore 64, and I could have picked the Atari ST. Could have been one of my choices, because the disappointment that I suffered when I went from the SID chip in the 64, Monty in the Run, to suddenly plinky plonky. It was like a step backwards. But that game, there was other games. I mean, I did have Street Fighter on the Amiga, which was god awful. There was loads of games, Power Drift. There was a lot of these, Space Harrier. These early kind of Sega games on the 16-bit are all absolute wank. So I'll never forgive them for Outrun, because it was awful.
Yeah. Are we just throwing the ST version in, or are we putting the Amiga one in as well?
I think you could probably throw the Amiga in with that one as well, but
Because I can only really talk about the Amiga one on that, and I totally get why you're putting that in. It was such a, it came in a big box. The screen, the screenshots on the back were the obvious what we'd had for years and years of arcade screenshots on the back with very little screenshots of the actual game that you were going to actually be buying. And you loaded it up and there was this expectation of a screenshot, that looked really quite good. And then all of a sudden there was this sample that scared the shit out of me when I actually loaded it up and it went Outrun or something like this.
That's right, yeah.
And the one thing about it was that came across for me was not only was it a bit choppy, but it was so squat. I was expecting, even just from from an Amiga's perspective, that they were going to stretch into the border or something and have a much more squarer screen. But this Testarossa looked like it had 100-ton weight pushed onto it.
And it was the frame rate. The frame rate was maybe like 10 frames per second. There was virtually no traffic. It was just awful. And then, of course, Sean Southern and Andrew Morris came along about a year later and put Lotus Turbo, and they just blew it out of the water. They said, "There you go. This is proof that the Amiga can do stuff like this." But,
yeah, I mean, there are games that you think, even though it's a powerhouse of an arcade machine at the particular time, and you'd think even my Amiga is going to be hard pushed for this. You'd still think it could do a better job than it actually did. And it looked rushed. It looked like, let's get a quick buck out, because I think it was close to Christmas, if I remember rightly, that it came out. I think there was a lot of people that were just disappointed at Christmas when they loaded that up. And I can totally see. It's just nice that there were some arcade conversions a little bit later on, like Ghosts and Goblins on the Amiga, which weren't too far away from being the arcade, even if it's still far away from it. At least they had a fighting chance. This game was just
I think you're right, though. I mean, Outrun was the biggest license at the time. It was phenomenal. And then the fact that they were still guilty of putting arcade screenshots, but even the static screenshots on the Amiga looked really good, or the ST. You looked at it and you thought, you had like the Spectrum. Obviously the Spectrum version. I know we're going off slightly off tangent. The Spectrum was it Amiga? Not Amiga. It was like Spectrum User or something. Had screenshots of. In fact, I think the screenshots that they used for the adverts never actually made it into the game itself. It's a completely different game. You were drawing in when you were looking at the screenshots of the Atari ST, statically, it looked impressive. And there was nothing wrong with the graphics. It was the fact that the frame rate was bloody awful, the sound was awful, and then, as you say, it was squashed, and it just, it was just a real bitter disappointment. And I think I can kind of throw all the early 16-bit kind of arcade conversions in with it, because they were all pretty disappointing. The Amiga was getting a lot.
And I think, again, if you want to add to that, there are worse other racing games like Crazy Cars.
They were all awful.
Anko and all. But it's just that this one was a major disappointment because it was Outrun. And you just really wanted Outrun at home. Crazy Cars is a terrible race game. But I was expecting it to be bad. It was Titus, for God's sake. Even I knew it was going to be a pretty bloody awful game. And that Anko game where you were going around a track and you hit a hay bale and you bloody exploded was just like the worst. You could have. But Outrun, just because it's Outrun, is a major disappointment. So we'll lock that one in. And I don't think there's many people that would say that's the wrong choice. So we've locked that one in. What's the second game then, Alan?
I'm going to upset a lot of people. The majority of probably computer owners in the UK with this one. It's a game that was released by a really well-renowned well-respected software house, and primarily they were on the Spectrum. and they came up with a number of games, and then this one came out, and apparently the rumor has it that this game was programmed and finished before this other game, but they realised, wait a minute, if we give them this they're not ready for this one. We'll save this, and because that's actually better than the most up to date one. We'll put the more
I think I
modern
know.
one out
I
first.
think I know from
Yeah.
the way you're
And
describing this. What this is?
it's a game that invented. It's a type of game, and it's a Night Lore by Ultimate Play the game.
That's right. They brought out Saberwolf just before it, even though they were doing the different game engines at the same time.
No, I don't know whether it's Saberwolf. I thought it was Underworld, or did that come at the same time? Underworld was like the 2-dimensional, which is an awful game anyway. But the reason I've picked Night Lore, there's probably different reasons.
I think
had I owned a Spectrum, I would have this would never have appeared on the list. Had my Commodore 64 had the ability to play Night Lore, this probably would never have been on the list. But I didn't, and that's why it's on the list. It created a type of game that it created this new genre of game. You had that, there was Alien 8, there was loads of other games. There was Fairlight, there was a lot. Was it what's it called again? There was an ocean game came out. I can't remember. It's like kind of dinosaur.
There was a Colditz like one.
There was a Colditz one. There was one about like I can't remember what it's called. It's like dinosaurs, whatever it was. But anyway, it created a genre of game. This isometric 3D type thing. Now, you know what? You'd be a fool and an imbecile if you were to say that the graphics were not impressive. They absolutely were. But my mate had a Spectrum, and I would go up to his house and I would sit and watch him playing this, and he would say to me, "Do you want a shot?" I went, No. I wasn't interested because it was just so frustrating trying to play the game. It's one of these games. I think it was overrated. I mean, it was astonishing for the time. It really was. Or you can, when you look at it, it's 3D. They'd even programmed like gravity into things, so when you push something, it would fall down, and it was very, very clever. It was almost like a kind of technical demo type thing, but they were just so frustrating to play. It was such a frustrating game to play. I defy anybody to actually say that they had fun playing it. Yeah, back in the day, you'd spent your $9.99 or whatever it was on a game, so you had to play it because you didn't have 1,000 games, you didn't have emulators, so you spent money on a game, you got it for your Christmas, you would play that bloody game until you either completed it or you just said, right, I've had enough of it. But was Night Lore a fun game to play? Really, I've tried to play these games when I do streams. When I do streams, with the Spectrum and all that kind of stuff, I always try and play them, and I just can't play them. You can't. It's not like you can't turn the view around or anything. I mean, Ant Attack and Zombie, which I think is a great game. You can spin the viewpoint around, but you can't do that in this game, and I just find them extremely frustrating. Like I says, if I'd had them on the C64 or I had a Spectrum, I would have probably persevered and played it and said, "Oh, that's great." But I just think, it's to coin a phrase.
I think even if you could spin them around, it'd be bloody difficult anyway. Because do you remember Spin Dizzy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Watch the space, folks. Spin Dizzy. You've just let the cat out of the bag. I have got a video. I actually did a kerfuffle, so that'll be coming out.
Oh, right.
In fact, I might actually put this out. I might put this out tonight because we're recording this. We're not recording this the night this is going out, so I might actually put that out tonight. I actually meant to put a video out tonight, so I'll do that after I finish recording this. But it's just like, did it look great? Absolutely. Was it fun to play? Was it bollocks?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? I can't complain about it. I do know that there are going to be people that say, "How could you do that?" It spawned a million clones across even into the 16-bit era. And the trouble with I have with it is it doesn't matter what angle I'm looking at it, I'm gonna do a wrong type of leap. I need to have a square on the floor for me to understand whether I'm in line with something.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't like games anyway where I had to take the key and take it to the door opens up so that you can speak to the fairy and all this sort of bollocks. I'm no good at that. And there are certain games that I do like to map, but those things, they're hard to map, but they became so complex that I don't think if you had graph paper you could do it. I don't know how Ollie Frey and all of that did those maps that were in the magazines at the time.
Yeah.
I really just, there's frustration in games like Underworld where you're on bubbles and being knocked off and all of that sort of stuff. But these games more frustrating than that. You know what I mean? I just hitting a spike and watching yourself go into chaotic mode as you die and then wait for you to be redrawn somewhere else on the bloody screen where you can't jump from.
I think, to quote something that I say in Spindies, it's an exercise in frustration.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I don't even get on with the most quintessential one that I think most people talk about, which is Head Over Heels. I just can't do them. I just really can't. I was not disappointed that the Commodore 64 didn't have so many of them because of the speed. I just went, I don't like them anyway.
Yeah.
I'd rather load up Iridium than play that. And Iridium's bloody hard, and I can't get anywhere in that. But I'd put that on a million times over some of these isometric ones. I tried it with Chimera. I didn't get on with that either.
Firebird software.
So we've locked that one in. I think you're going to get a lot of complaints probably about that one. I can understand it. It's just, for me, I love Batman, and I can't play the isometric version of Batman on the Amstrad PC W8256 or whatever it came out on. And I love Batman. Even that, I just go, bollocks, I ain't playing that. Third one, please, Alan.
Third one. Again, it's I was trying to kind of figure out who I should actually put the blame on with this, and again, it's not going to come in any real surprise. I've kind of spoke about this quite a lot. It's sort of like the quintessential game that I think about that kind of uses this game mechanic, and it's one of these open world games where you're kind of free to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. And you've got to buy things, you've got to find things, you've got to take things to someone to then unlock something, to then get a part to build things, and you pick up wood, etc., etc. And the game I'm kind of going to blame it on is Fallout. I don't know what system it would have been, maybe the Xbox 360. Originally I was going to blame Zelda, but then Zelda, at least the early Zelda games, like the Link's Awakening and that kind of stuff in the SNES.
So the role-playing game Fallout that's like isometric.
Yeah, it's more to do with the fact that you've got to like craft things, and you build like a weapon, and you build a sword. You can make a bow and arrow, but it'll only last so many goes, and you've got to collect bits of wood, and you've got to collect stone to make the tips and that. Oh, bollocks to that. I understand that some people love these games, but they've become like chores. I like the simplistic games, like the early Zelda. You would find a key, which you would then take to a castle, and you get in the dungeon, you'd unlock a chest, and you would get a new, bigger sword. And it was great, and that was your sword that you could use for the rest of the game. But then the later Zeldas, that it's again crafting and that kind of stuff. It just, I think again, if here's the thing, I could potentially take Fallout to the desert island, and I would probably be quite happy with it, because it's like, well, I've got fuck all else to do, so I can spend hours and hours and hours. I mean, my worst nightmare would be playing No Man's Sky. Honestly,
right.
Oh, seriously, people that spend 20, 30 hours. People that spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. Yeah, if you've got nothing else to do. But yeah, I think I've got a very, very narrow span of attention. You know, I get frustrated easily with things. Right, I'll just move on to that, and I forget to play things. And I don't know how many times I've bought into. You were talking earlier on about I feel I'm missing out on anything. Well, perfect example. There's going to be a new Grand Theft Auto coming out. I think is it next year? I think it's coming out.
Right.
I 100% will probably go and buy it. I know I will because people will say it's the best game ever. I did the same with what are we up to now? Grand Theft Auto 5, is it? I think it's 5.
What if there's crafting in it?
yeah, and there's just like things like you're playing the part of this dude, and you can go and you can buy a car, and that's fine. But you can take it to like this paint workshop, and you can get a private number plate, and you can paint it, or you can go to a clothes shop and change it. Oh, fuck off! Who's interested in? There's games now that I've played, and you spend. I mean, here's one I'm going to point the finger at. Virtua Tennis is one of the best tennis games ever. And I bought it. I bought it on the Vita. And you've got to like fuck about for a wee while creating your character. None of which the options look like me. I'm a 57-year-old fat bloke. You don't get a 57-year-old fat bloke option. You got to look like a cool dude with a fucking I don't know. Yeah, a 20-year-old. I'm not interested in Avatar. So I just usually pick anything. And then you've got to you have the sub games. You've got to even just trying to get into the actual game. I just want to play a fucking game of tennis. I'm not interested in hitting golf balls into a hole to try and improve my stats to give me a better backhand. All that shit. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but they've just padded all these extra things into games. I just want to play the game. I want to go and kill somebody and collect that, whatever. But I've kind of put the blame on Fallout, because it's an open world game. When Fallout 4 came out for the Xbox 360, I rushed out and bought it, and I played it for 5 minutes. When I did a nice and nasty with Bill Harbison, Andrew Lowe, both of them picked, spoiler alert, they both picked Tears of the Kingdom by bloody Zelda.
And you went out and bought it, didn't you?
And I went out and bought it, and I played it for 5 minutes. Seriously, yeah, I can't be arsed with these games. I think the word that I would use is intimidated.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I got a little bit confused at the beginning because Fallout is a series, but it started off Fallout 1 and 2 as being a role-playing game in isometric view, but it was Fallout 3 that turned it into a 3D...
I fucking hate that. I would hate that twice as much then. Fucking isometric, Jesus Christ.
Isometric. It looked like Syndicate Wars. Do you remember Syndicate?
Yeah.
It looked a little bit like that. But then Fallout 3 turned it into a 3D world survival type thing, and then we're talking about role-playing games, and then we're talking about crafting, and you put the two together, and then you're really pissed off. So I was just wondering, are we putting Fallout in, but anything to do with crafting you just want thrown out?
Yeah, it's getting the blame. Yeah, it's a bit like all these arseholes that were rioting in Rotherham and all that kind of stuff. There's always going to be a focus on one person who gets the blame for it. But there's lots of things that come into it. Yeah, just the Fallout genre, the crafting, that can just fuck off, honestly.
Yeah. Because, I think that's more controversial than the other ones, to be quite honest. Survival games are incredibly huge at the moment. There's Valheim, there's Enshrouded, there's just a ton, and now it's all zombie with crafting, you know what I mean? So it's like it is getting a bit exponentially too big for its boots, I will say that. I quite like a crafting game, and I can actually big it up by turning around and saying, look, if I buy a bow, do you think that the string's not going to snap? Of course it's going to snap. So yeah, it should be in the game that it's got a life spell and you have to craft yourself another one. However, we're talking about fun games that we just want to pick up and play. So I long for the old games like Zelda Link to the Past, and just he picks up a sword and it lasts you the whole of the bloody game. I don't want,
yeah.
So yeah, I totally get that. So I'm with you. Yeah, let's throw in crafting and the Fallout series as a whole thing. Okay, so right, those are wiped off the planet. And you've just gone and upset half the other side of the planet with you taking
Every
it out
Spectrum
with your
subscriber,
free
yeah.
And so with that, I suppose it's time to sort of like round it all up. I've found this a very enjoyable experience, and thank you very much for allowing me to sort of talk my way through this. I've had a whale of a time, and I think you've chosen some quintessentially great things there. I mean, there's thousands of games. You try whittling it down, and if you've had a YouTube channel like yours for over 10 plus years and played that many games, this must have been pretty tricky for you, let alone someone like me that I just have to go back on my memories a little bit and just do that. So would you like just to end this particular podcast, please, Alan?
It was tough. I mean, I now respect the people I've had on my Nice and Nasty previously, because it is difficult. I think actually that the picking the ones I wanted to eradicate was actually more difficult. But hopefully folk have enjoyed watching this. I just want to say thank you very much for playing the role of Mamemeister. You knocked it out of the park, mate. Thank you very much for doing that.
No, like I said, I had a ball, and I hope people listen to this a lot of times, and it's on to the next one. I'm really looking forward to who you got on next as a guest, and maybe I've given you a few pointers on how to do it properly, Alan. I don't know.
Thanks, Dale, and obviously, thank you very, very much to everyone that's listened today.
I've had a ball. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay, guys, listen, thanks again. Cheers, Dale. Until next time, folks.
Bye.
As always, thank you very much for listening.